Two clubs, a city, and a rivalry so fierce that the conflict is etched in history through films, literature, and countless police reports. Imagine a street, Green Street, in the heart of London, the birthplace of the fiercest, most passionate, and darkest rivalry in football history. Millwall and West Ham United. It's not just a match, it's a century-old feud. Are you ready? Because this story will take you back 100 years to the dockyards, street fights, and moments of hope. When the FA was founded in 1863, only 11 football clubs within London were nationally recognised as structured clubs. As time went on, however, the popularity of football began to rise, particularly in the working-class community. Young men flocked to local football grounds to enjoy a game of football away from their families and jobs. The companies where these men worked recognized this. In order to boost morale in the workplace, businesses, particularly for labor workers, set up amateur football teams where their employees could enjoy an occasional game of football. Some of the first companies to do this were based in the East End of London, and this is how Millwall Club was founded. Millwall and West Ham United are two clubs founded in the late 19th century by labourers working in the shipyards of East London. Millwall FC was founded in 1885 as Millwall Rovers by labourers working in James Morton's. These workers, mostly of Scottish origin, operated in the Isle of Dogs area of the River Thames. The club's nickname is the Lions, and its motto is, "We fear no foe," which reflects the rebellious and fearless spirit of its supporters. West Ham United, on the other hand, was founded in 1895 as Thames Ironworks FC by the foremen and labourers of the shipyard. In 1900, the club moved to Upton Park, changed its name to West Ham United, and added the hammer symbol to its emblem, symbolising its labouring roots, hence the nickname the Hammers. The founding of these two clubs took place in poor working-class neighbourhoods of London at the height of the Industrial Revolution. The Docklands and Isle of Dogs, areas of southeast London, were the centre of the shipyards, and the workers there were close-knit, not only in their workplaces, but also in their social lives. However, the rivalry between these two shipyards was not limited to the struggle for economic supremacy. Millwall and Thames Ironworks enjoyed some success in the amateur leagues of East London and Essex. The first time the two teams would meet professionally would be in the FA Cup in 1899, and tensions were high at the match. Fans and players from both sides worked for rival companies, competing for similar job opportunities. Thames Ironworks were not favourites with Millwall, having lost several friendly matches against them in previous years. This was a big game to see who was the biggest club in East London. Millwall won this game 2-1, which was a big blow for the Ironworks. However, this would only be the first of countless brutal matches to come between Millwall and West Ham. In 1900, the Thames Ironworks was disbanded and the club became West Ham United, the name we know today. Millwall also moved their stadium from East London to the other side of the River Thames in South London. In a match between Millwall and West Ham on the 17th of September, 1906 in particular, the whole match was full of dirty tackles and aggressive football. A major commotion on the pitch broke out after a West Ham player pushed a Millwall player into a metal advertising board. But the mayhem didn't just stay on the pitch. Fans from both sides went at each other in the stands, leading to huge fights inside and outside the stadium. When England declared war on Germany on the 4th of August 1914, it did not initially affect football leagues. Matches continued for about a year, but this changed with the introduction of conscription in 1916. This made it compulsory for able-bodied men between the ages of 18 and 41 to join the army. However, there were some exemptions. For example, those with health problems, teachers and workers in critical industries were exempt from military service. During this period, wartime leagues were organized to adapt to the circumstances. Millwall and West Ham faced each other 33 times in these temporary leagues, mostly with squads made up of amateur footballers who were not obliged to go to war. The origins of the rivalry go back to the period of economic crisis and strikes in the 1920s. The general strike in Britain in 1926 saw a huge solidarity movement among shipyard workers. The Thames Ironworks workers, the West Ham supporters, were one of the strongest groups supporting the strike. However, the Millwall workers began scabbing in a secret agreement with the bosses. Scabbing, a term used to describe workers who break strikes and work despite union calls for solidarity. This was seen as a betrayal by the West Ham workers, and tensions between the two groups escalated into street fights. The scabbing of Millwall workers was not only an economic issue but also a matter of honor and loyalty. It sowed the seeds of a hatred between the supporters of the two clubs that would last for generations. Following the end of World Wars, football attracted more attention than ever before. By 1948, attendance at matches was at an all-time high. Stadiums were full to capacity. During this period, Millwall suffered a decline compared to the pre-war period. They were relegated first to the third and then to the fourth division. West Ham, on the other hand, was struggling in the second division in those years. In 1958, West Ham managed to be promoted to the top league. This development caused Millwall and West Ham not to face each other for a long time. However, this did not mean that the rivalry between them was over. When the 1970s arrived, the United Kingdom was not exactly in the best of times. Unemployment rates had reached extraordinary levels. High inflation was disrupting many people's lives, and football hooliganism had reached its most dangerous point. Football fans across the country began to form groups that traveled to represent their clubs, causing serious incidents wherever they went. These groups traveled to home and away matches to support their teams and called themselves firms, that is, fan gangs or hooligan groups. West Ham fans formed a hooligan organization called Intercity Firm. Millwall fans, in turn, formed their own group called the Bushwackers. Both groups became notorious for their violent tendencies, and it was only a matter of time before the two teams clashed again. In 1972, inspired by the fact that Millwall defender Harry Cripps had played for both clubs, a friendly match was organized with the intention of bringing the two clubs together. The aim was to organize a friendly encounter, but things did not go as expected. Aside from the football played on the pitch, violent incidents before, during, and after the match overshadowed the whole event. Fights broke out frequently, but the real agenda of the day was not the score, but the uncontrollable fanaticism. For more and more people, football was becoming a mere background, the main aim being to pick fights, so much so that some did not even come to watch the match, but were there only to get involved in the conflict. Unfortunately, this trend soon came to a tragic end. The incident took place on September 21st, 1976. West Ham and Millwall were playing matches against different opponents that day, but the fans were more interested in each other than in the matches themselves. Some members of West Ham's Intercity Firm travelled to New Cross railway station in southeast London, expecting to meet Millwall fans on the route they usually used for matches. As they expected, a group of Millwall fans were waiting for them there, and violent clashes soon broke out. Several fans were detained. A police officer was injured by a kick to the kidney, and a teenager suffered serious head injuries. The most tragic incident, however, was the death of Ian Pratt, an 18-year-old Millwall fan who fell from the railway platform during the chaos and was killed when he was hit by an oncoming train. Millwall fans were deeply saddened by the tragic loss of a young friend. This was further fueled by West Ham hooligans introducing a new chant that mockingly minimized the incident. It was chanted at certain matches. At this point, the football rivalry turned into personal hatred. Millwall supporters were impatient for revenge and were waiting for the opportunity to carry it out. In 1978, West Ham were relegated to the second division after a disappointing season. Millwall were already in that league. On 7th October 1978, the two teams were about to meet again. Millwall fans had been preparing for this moment for weeks. A West Ham fan must die to avenge Ian were being distributed at Millwall home games. But the police were prepared, and more than 500 police officers were on duty in and around railway stations where clashes were likely. Thorough searches and identity checks were carried out throughout the day in an attempt to prevent any further escalation. Despite these measures, clashes broke out between fans in the streets near West Ham's ground, Upton Park. A total of 10 people were detained, but there were no serious injuries. On the pitch, West Ham won with a clear score of 3-0. In 1986, another tragedy occurred. West Ham and Millwall met in a cup tie at West Ham's Upton Park Stadium. Emotions were still running high following the death of young Millwall fan Ian Pratt in the 1970s. As expected, clashes broke out between fans at railway stations around London before the match. But the real tragedy occurred at a railway station in central London, where 19-year-old West Ham fan Terry Burns was stabbed 6 times. This incident led many fans to realise that the rivalry was out of control. Many Millwall fans paid their respects to Terry Burns, the second victim of this heated rivalry. After this incident, West Ham and Millwall met 13 more times in total. Although there are still occasional incidents of violence in these matches, the police have taken much stricter measures against football hooliganism in recent years. Severe penalties for violence have been introduced and preventative measures have been implemented with a large police presence on match days. The 2009 raid at Upton Park cannot be overlooked. The incident, which took place after a cup match between West Ham and Millwall in August 2009, in the 2010-11 season, West Ham were relegated back to the second division and Millwall were already in that league. This created great enthusiasm among Millwall fans. One Millwall fan even hired a plane to fly a banner reading "Avram Grant, Millwall legend," during West Ham's last game against Wigan Athletic. The aeroplane flew directly over the stadium where Millwall were playing, in full view of the West Ham fans. West Ham's 112-year history at Upton Park came to an end in the 2016-17 season when they moved to the London Stadium in Stratford, reducing the distance between them and Millwall to around 6.2 kilometres. Exactly 1 year after the move, on 24th August 2017, a tragic incident occurred. Nottingham Forest fan Paul O'Donnell died after being attacked by Millwall fan Andrew Lewis. The incident allegedly started when O'Donnell called Lewis West Ham. A manslaughter charge was eventually dropped against Andrew Lewis. In 2018, West Ham and Millwall fans put their bitter rivalry aside and came together for a young fan battling cancer. 3-year-old West Ham fan Isla Caton needed costly treatment for a rare form of cancer called neuroblastoma. To support her, a Millwall fan organised a sponsored run in a West Ham shirt from the Den to the London Stadium. Following Isla's death in 2022, both West Ham and Millwall clubs showed solidarity by issuing a joint statement offering their condolences to the Caton family. The film Green Street Hooligans made this rivalry famous worldwide. Although the film is a story told from the point of view of West Ham fans, it dramatically portrayed the enmity with Millwall. Although the fact that Green Street was the eventful street just behind West Ham's Boleyn ground was not emphasized enough in the film, it became a symbol of the clashes between the two sets of supporters. Although the film romanticized the violent world of hooliganism, it showed that in real life there is a much darker and tragic side to this rivalry. Millwall and West Ham fans not only support their football teams, but also adopt a lifestyle and identity. For West Ham fans, hatred of Millwall is instilled from childhood. By the age of 10, every West Ham fan is told the legends of the ICF by their fathers, and the tradition of seeing Millwall fans as downtowners continues. Similarly, Millwall fans have a special hatred for West Ham, even though they clash with other rivals such as Chelsea and Tottenham. This hatred is passed down from generation to generation and manifests itself in banners, chants, and provocations in the stands. Millwall and West Ham are two clubs born from working-class neighbourhoods in London. The supporters of both teams wear this identity with pride. However, the scabbing incident has turned these two groups against each other. West Ham fans see Millwall as betrayers, while Millwall fans see West Ham as a supremacist group. This cultural clash shows that the rivalry is not only a sporting issue, but also a social class struggle. The rivalry between Millwall and West Ham United is a story that goes beyond football. Starting in the 19th century shipyards, this rivalry has been shaped by strikes, street fights, and tragic events. It has been the scene of fierce struggles on the pitch and violence and provocations in the stands. While Green Street became the symbol of this rivalry, the film Green Street Hooligans announced this story worldwide. This rivalry is a reflection of the working-class culture of England. It also shows how powerful a tool football can be in a social and historical context. Even today, fans of both teams continue to carry this historic hatred from generation to generation. The matches between Millwall and West Ham are played not only for 3 points, but also to settle a century-old score. It's not just a derby, it's a feud. If you enjoyed this dive into football's darkest rivalry, give it a like and consider subscribing for more stories from the beautiful game's brutal side. You can also be aware of my other videos by subscribing to the channel.